Welcome to the Mind for Success podcast, a space for heart-centered entrepreneurs to live in deep alignment with what matters most, overcome subconscious limitations, and shift their energy into an unstoppable force. Before we get started, take a deep breath, hit the subscribe button, and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I'm Kimberly Lebbing, and I am super excited to introduce you to our guest today. She is totally full of energy. You're going to love her. Her name is Tracy Gunn, and her company is called Get Exitable. You'll also see she's very excitable. We were talking about that, which one it was. She's a serial entrepreneur. She spent the last 16 years launching and running 4 businesses until she burned out. And I'm going to let her tell you her story all around that. But she helps people build and plan an exit strategy for their business. So welcome,
Absolutely.
Tracy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yes, I get excitable. I own a candy store, so often I'm living on candy, which makes me very excited. That's the one business I still have. So thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to share my little story, my cautionary tale, like we talked about. So,
Yes.
I mean, if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready. In fact, that's the first thing I always want to hear is tell me your story, because I just love to hear the stories and why people do what they do.
Absolutely. Well, for me, business has always been a safe space. You know, when things were not going well in my life, I would create a business, and because that was a world I could control, and I got to say what happened there. And if things didn't go great, it was because of me, not because of other people and their choices. So I love that part of things. And I love being able to build something from nothing. And so that's kind of how I got into business in the first place. And so over years, I had a number of things that happened where I made lemonade. And the way that I made lemonade is I created another business until the point that I had 4 businesses, and it was a lot. I had 2 restaurants and 2 candy stores, and I was running them all by myself. And my daughter had a grandbaby, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm not a millionaire. And I'm like working from, 7 a.m. until 1 a.m. every day. And I'm just tired. I'm just going to sell. And so I thought, sure, I'll sell. It'll be worth something. It won't be millions, but it'll be worth something. And so, I kind of reached out to some local guys, and I found a broker, and he, you can imagine, right? You show your baby to the stranger who's going to look at the books and tell you what the business is worth, which is scary enough. But what was even worse is that he came back and said, sorry, Tracy, there's nothing worth selling here. And
Wow.
Devastated,
oh my gosh,
punch in the gut, awful. And so I cried a little. I kept it together, and then I showed him the door, and then I cried. And after a couple of days, I thought to myself, you know what? There's something I'm missing here for whatever reason. This is his thoughts, but maybe that's not reality. Let me see what I can fix. Because that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? We pivot. Like COVID comes, we pivot. We do what we need to do because you got to pay the bills, and you have staff, and you got to keep going. So I gave myself 6 months, and I said, all right, I had one really large restaurant. It was a 6,500 square foot restaurant. And I said, let me get rid of the biggest headache. Let me try to fix some things. This is where the most value I think would be. I shifted from growing and running to fixing and delegating and making it transferable. I taught myself what did I had to think about, okay, I gave myself 6 months, and what did I miss? What did Bill not see that I see, right? Why didn't it translate for him, the broker? Probably because it wasn't an easy sale, but there were pieces that were missing. Really, it was that I wasn't going with the business, and I was the catalyst. I was the one that just kept everything going. And so I really had to figure out how to go from a 0 valuation to be more profitable, have value on paper, and make it an easy decision for a buyer. to decide to kind of go into it, right? Restaurants are hard anyway. And that's what I did. And so, but after I went through that process, I realized, gosh, the same thing happened at my second business. You know, it was COVID and I had a landlord dispute, and, you know, I had to like figure out, how do I get out of this business? And so my whole point is that, you know, most of us don't think about the end until we're there.
Right.
And if you have time, like I gave myself 6 months, and I was very fortunate, I was able to shift and have the energy still to do the things to make it more profitable, fix the things. I had that time, and I actually found a buyer in 3 months, which was pretty amazing. But I had the time. A lot of people like plan for retirement, and then a month or so before, they're like, okay, it's time to list, and they're not ready at all. And so became my passion project. I love talking about this subject. I love talking to small business owners, and I just want to like sound the alarm, like plan ahead, plan ahead. It doesn't matter if it's in 10 years, you know, the longer you have to plan, the higher likelihood that you're going to get the number you want.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a cautionary tale.
I love it. And I didn't realize that some of your businesses were restaurants, because I mean, that just puts a whole other layer of, dang, you must be a hard worker to be able to put out, to be able to keep all that together.
For sure.
But wow, I mean, that's really incredible. And that you were able to sell those in the time frame that you did. Also amazing.
It was, I mean, and again, only because I knew, like, the most awful day, right, where he told me my businesses weren't worth anything, was also became my best day. Because, you know, sometimes when what you don't know hurts you the most.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And we're all building willy-nilly. I would say 90% of us are maybe accidental entrepreneurs, or at least building without a specific plan in mind, right? But we would never do that with a house. We would never say, oh, let's just, maybe we'll put the thing over here, or maybe we'll do this. Like, we have very clear plans when we build a house. It should be similar in a business. And I learned the hard way that when you don't plan appropriately, or at least know what direction you're going, like what's the end game here, because that end game, that target, really does start to filter everything else for you.
Right. That can be like your navigator for everything
like
that you
compass.
do.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Right. It's like, does this get me closer? Like, for example, recently I've been like dabbling in buying businesses. I've been flipping houses. Like, I've had some extra time. I had someone earn into my candy store and then leave. So I've been like playing with all of these different models, which gives me a lot of opportunity to talk about experiences, right? And what that was like. But I just recently had someone come to me asking me to take over their restaurant. And it was such a great opportunity. But you know what? What's my target? Going into that craziness again is not on my list. So
right.
And it's so hard as a business owner, because we see opportunity. We're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not aligned with what I want. It's not.
Yeah.
And, you know, every once in a while I'll start to think about, I'm like, no, stop. Because I finally learned that I have to have a target in mind. I have to know where I'm going and what I really want. And I mean, how many business owners don't ever think about what they really want?
Yeah. True. I mean, if they're not in alignment, that's one of the things I talk about, just in a different way, is like being in alignment with what you want. Because when you're not, that's like, I'll call it entrepreneurial ADHD, because you're all over the place, grasping in every little opportunity that comes along. And should I try this? Should I do that? And when you don't have that clear focus and alignment, you can be all over the place.
Exactly. So, it's a natural filtration system. So I've really kind of latched on to the idea of an exit plan. And a lot of people get weirded out about the name, right? I'm not ready. I'm like, it doesn't really matter. It's really just planning. What do you want? Where are you going with this, right? Very often, we're supposed to start our businesses with some type of strategic plan, right? With the end in mind. We always forget that part. We do the
Mhm.
part that we need for the bank or the loan. But I mean, really, we should be having some kind of like in 20 years, where do I want to be? What should this look like by then? And how off track am I, you know?
Right.
And so, like I used to have one of my restaurants was an airport restaurant. So we had like little planes that would come, and the guys were telling me, the pilots, they would say, you know, if we are off just a little tiny bit, we could wind up in Seattle instead of Los Angeles, because eventually that you just get off track so far. You're so far from where you intended, all because you didn't pinpoint exactly where you were going. And that
Right.
is and you can change. You can change your mind. It's not forever. It's not locked in stone. So anyway, that's kind of the things we're talking about when we talk about this. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I love that you said that you can change. Like it's
yeah,
okay to change your mind. Like we do that. I do it all the time. What I thought my business was going to be
right.
and what I wanted to, what I
Mhm.
originally wanted is totally different today
Absolutely.
than what it was even 2 years ago.
Well, we're so different. You know, the person I was last week versus this week can be radically different, right? That whole gap versus gain thing, like that, you know,
Yes.
how far we've come just from the last week is just, anyway, it's just very, I just love, and I love that, you know, I think small business owners are like the superheroes of our economy, of our country, of our communities. And like we are like the backbone here. And so if small business owners don't deserve to win, who does really? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And so
agree.
and so many of us now are like, you know, the boomers are about to retire, and there's 12 million of them, all small business owners ready to retire. And their businesses, I would say, most of them are not ready,
Mm,
which, you know, again, if they listen to my broker, they would just close.
yeah.
And imagine what could happen in our country, not
Yeah.
just to
How
them.
sad. How
It's
sad.
awful. Employees, but also most of us are planning for that big wealth transference when we do retire or sell,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We're hopeful for that. How much of us have a huge retirement fund? Not most of us. And so we are, you know, planning that big cash in jackpot day. And if it doesn't happen, then what?
Yeah.
So many things to think about.
Yeah. I'm just curious because of your experience, what is it that people are looking for that makes the business valuable? Like what's that like what's about can you talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, if it's actually, you know, some of it's just common sense, taking a step back and not like seeing the forest for the trees, right? Or like if I just didn't come in for the next month, what would happen,
Mm,
right? What is being only pushed by me and handled by me, that if you remove me, does everything fall apart?
mm,
If I were to sell and hand it over to someone as it is today, what would happen, right? Would it get better? Sometimes we're the problem. That's fine. But sometimes we are the problem because we are doing everything,
right. Oh, I see this so many times with people.
right?
So yeah, yeah.
And so now you're like, okay, so that's kind of what we do is we do a 3-step process, right? We do, and we work with people longer term, but the initial part is like, let's plan an exit plan. And that involves like, what do you want? Like when, where, how, who, you know, that kind of thing. But also, what is your business worth right now? Because most people have no idea how to value their business, right? And
Right.
then the final part is what are the parts that are broken that you need to fix so that you
Mm,
could hand it over and not have it fall apart?
mm,
Nobody wants to buy your job. Let's just be honest.
right.
Most days you don't want your job. Nobody wants to buy
This is so true because
that. It's totally.
there's so many when you said like there's so many people that do all the things. Like literally
Mhm.
they're doing all the things and
Right.
all they've got all these plates and they're juggling all these things.
Yeah.
And if they stepped away, everything would crash and burn.
Right. I mean, and the simple test is we do an exercise where we're just like, okay, let's pretend you're on vacation for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, and you're not working. Like you're not checking in, you're not answering, like you're not doing anything. What are the big fires? Those are your things you want to take care of first. So that's the third part, is we plan our opportunity roadmap. That's what I call it. But the idea of like, what are the things that, number one, that you could fix that are quick. So for myself, when I fixed my business, I had a customer loyalty program that was already in my point of sale that I just had to turn on. I was already paying for it.
Oh, wow.
So like all of a sudden, and then I just had to teach my servers, okay, get them to sign up. And I could track who they are, where they are, how often they come, what do they buy, what, all of a sudden I had all this data that I wasn't tracking before. And the second thing I did was that I gave one of my staff people extra hours to do my liquor inventory. And magically she found who was stealing from me. So all of a sudden I was more profitable. Like that didn't require a lot of work on my part, but I had to identify it, right, and fix it.
Right.
So I delegated to her an extra, and I'll tell you, the extra 4 hours a week for her was worth every penny.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right. And that happens a lot in bars and restaurants.
Right.
But like my point is that there are things we can do that are pretty simple if we just took a step back for just even an hour and thought about, or just did a time diary of like, what do I do all week that I never want to do again that I could teach somebody? Right.
So
Those
valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but again, we're often so in it, right? Or thinking about like, 1,000 miles down the road that we're not paying attention to what we're doing in it to free ourselves from the time. And I'll give you, this all happened for me because I was just done mentally, physically, like I was just done. But all of a sudden, after a couple months, I didn't hate it as much anymore because magically I got rid of some of my headaches.
Yeah.
Staff, jobs, right? I started to delegate. I started to be more tactical and structuring, kind of like, I guess what you do is like being very mindful about what do I want to be able to do every day versus what do I have to do? And how can I flip that balance?
Right. Right. And I'm curious, just because of what I do, if you do people struggle with that letting go and, okay, I need to let this part go. I need to find someone to do this part. Cause that's the part I see, like on my end, like that's
I'm sure
things I see that people struggle with.
I find that people who, it depends. We deal with two basic customers, right? People are getting ready for retirement in a couple years and they're preparing. And then people who are just so mentally done, they would, happily set it on fire and walk away. Those people, they pay somebody to take it, right? So they both are going to respond differently, right?
Okay.
And one is not in a rush and one is so in a rush. I was in a rush. So I can relate to that.
Right. So you were very motivated to go ahead and do whatever you had to do to get it done.
And I already had systems in place. So for me, that was just the next step. I just didn't know to do it. Yeah. I didn't think about it. And so, how you value your business is based on your profitability, but also your other assets are like, who are your customers? How well do you know them? How can you talk to them? Can you talk to them regularly? Can you consistently bring them back? Like, do you have dependable sales? Do you have some controls in place? Do you have SOPs? Are your books in order? Like, these things sound very common sense. When we're in it, it's always, we'll get to it, right?
Right. It's on the list.
Of course it is, because there's another fire that happens before that, right? The minute we plan that, something happens and we shift it. And for myself, it took, and this is where I think for people, when they get this, it took me deciding that I wanted to fix things to make my business exitable. And when I mean exitable, that doesn't mean I had to leave like forever. It could be that I just don't have to do all the things anymore.
Right.
Right. How many of us, let's say, so I'll give you another statistic, which is a fascinating one. So if, let's just say, most businesses, we'll just say most, are not prepared or ready to sell, they're not really transferable. There's some work to be done. There is a statistic from Biz Buy Sell that of the listed businesses, now these are the businesses that are ready. Like some broker said, yes, we'll list it. 85% do not sell.
Wow. 85%?
Yes. Yes. And so now the market's changing. You know how people used to not flip houses, but more people are nowadays. People are starting to do that for businesses. So there's more buyers on the market. And there's a lot of different reasons why that statistic is what it is. But if you think about the fact that 85% of ready businesses don't sell, what are our chances here?
Right.
And so we may all have to think about our exit differently. So you may have an earn-in situation where you retain half of the ownership, but somebody else does all the work and they earn in, they take over your job, but now you own half. So, but because how many of us would keep our businesses almost forever because they're paying us if we didn't have to do 90% of the work we already do?
Right. Yeah,
So
I would think a lot would keep it. Right.
There's advantages to owning a business. There's tax write-offs and things like that. Right. And so, you know, if you think about that, just because selling a business is hard, most of them don't sell, and 12 million of them are coming on the market in the next 5 years. So there's not enough buyers. There's a huge problem that's a tidal wave of problems coming at us. So if we are thinking about selling in the next 5 years and we don't plan ahead, the likelihood is really small that it's going to happen. And so what do we do about that, right? How do we prepare ourselves? How do we become part of the 15% that actually sell?
Right. That was my next question. So what are people looking for?
So they're looking for, they're looking for an industry that's growing, obviously. They're looking for something that's profitable. Again, nobody really wants to buy your job unless it's their passion project. I saw a documentary actually last night with Judy Blume, the author. She bought a bookstore in Key West.
Oh, how fun.
Because she loves books. So
that's perfect.
Clearly a hobby for her. Right? There are people who will want to do that. But generally speaking, most people are not in their retirement years looking for hobbies like buying a business. Retail especially is difficult, right? Because it just requires staff and all the things that come with it. But people are looking for profit and they're looking for ease. Many of the new buyers that are coming on the market are looking for businesses that will run, boring businesses, but that will run without them. Again, they're not interested. Now, some of them are doing roll-ups. So like, for example, an auto repair shops. There's a lot of them that are going to be retiring. So they're scooping up all of these. You know, you have one by itself with some, profit. You put that with 15 others. Now all of a sudden you have a chain and it's worth way more because you're rolling it up, right? It's a smart way to think about things. Or I had a gentleman, he owns an electrical company. And one of the strategies for him was, well, all your friends are retiring at the same time as you. Why not scoop them up? And now you have a bigger company. Now you have something worth selling, right? Profits are higher. And so, and they weren't ready to sell either, right? So like there's things you can do strategically if you give yourself enough runway to plan ahead. So what we suggest is create an exit plan, and we'll actually help you for free. We have an offer on our website if you'd like to do that. But basically, create your exit plan, understand what your business is worth today, identify what you could fix to make it better, to get to the number you really want. Because most people in their exit plan, we do this a little tricky. We do the exit plan, we ask them what number they want to sell for before we show them what their business is worth. Because we need them to understand how that number they've created for themselves is not based on anything other than a feeling. Right? And it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it gives them something to aim for now.
Right.
So if they want 400,000 and their business only profited 100,000 last year, now maybe you might get a 2 multiple, maybe that's, you might, but most of the time it's a 1 or 1.5. So you've got a gap there. So how do you propose to bridge that gap? And that's where the strategies come with, mergers and acquisition, or having a new product or offer, raising how many people after 30 years have never raised their prices in years? A lot.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like tightening up the budget, or there's just a lot of things you can do, but you really have to go through those first 3 steps first to kind of really understand the lay of the land, right? Like you're mapping out what you have and what you want, and then you figure out, okay, how are we going to get there? And that's the fun part, because anything can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So a question popped in my mind, and I kind of thinking I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
Like, would this be something that, like, let's say you have a newer business. Is this something you should be thinking about as a newer business?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, again, I think we talked a little bit about the filter, right? About the choices you make, about where you're going.
Right.
So even if you're a new business, to know that you want to do this for 15 years, or let's just say you're going to, like for myself, for my candy store, I knew that I was going to stay in this town, owning this candy store until all of my children were grown and graduate. I was going to uproot them or whatever. Okay. So I had a plan. I had an end date in mind. And after that, then I figured I would figure it out. And I had this idea about, like, I wanted to have a couple stores and so on and so forth. I had a general idea of the direction I was going. But when you put something in, maybe this is a good analogy. Like when you put a location in your Google Maps, it tells you the most direct route, right?
Right.
If I want to go to New York City, but I don't put an address, it's going to give me some kind of willy-nilly, and I could be really far from where I aimed for. But if you kind of say, all right, in 10 years, we'll evaluate, but I think by then I want to have 3 retail stores, or I want to grow to 2 million in top line sales and 750,000 in profit, so that way I could sell, and so on and so forth. And I want to have a good customer list, so that asset goes with it. And I want to buy the building so then I have another asset to sell. And then I want to, do you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you're deciding these things, and then it's amazing how when you define it, it shows up in your life.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Yeah. But when you never define it,
right,
it could be showing up, but you're not looking for it. You might miss it.
I'm also just thinking about the value of, even if you're not selling, the fact that you're building your business where anyone can step in at any time. So you can go take the, 2-week vacation, 1-month vacation, and leave it. And everything still runs. Like, who wouldn't want more time freedom? How many people walk into being an entrepreneur and they want more time freedom and they don't have it? Right. And this takes care of that too.
Absolutely. Like, so I tell them my little story, like I started my businesses with freedom in mind, freedom to decide, freedom to exist, freedom to try, freedom to explore and learn. And then what I looked around and I thought, gosh, I created a prison for myself. Like, I'm stuck here. Like and not only am I stuck, but now everyone's depending on me on top of that. So I'm really stuck. So instead of the freedom I had planned for, I created my own prison, and that was my own doing.
Yeah.
Only because I didn't know any better. It was just, it's like when your kids want to help in the kitchen. Sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself, but then they never learn how to do it. So you're doing everything forever. Like, I'll do your laundry, I'll do the dishwasher, I'll forever, because they don't do it right. We just have it's just sometimes it feels like it's easier.
It really truly isn't. And I was in a networking group this morning, just networking, and there was a guy that was in real estate, and he said whenever they came into the organization, they'd say, so you're in business, so you can create your own hours. Which 80 hours do you want to work? And it was just a joke, because it's true that so many people just get really create a job, create a prison.
Yes.
As you said, of just working all the time and never really thinking about who else can do this for me, and that exit strategy.
Right. Well, and again, so for somebody who doesn't necessarily want to sell, that's fine too. But wouldn't you like more freedom? Wouldn't you like more time?
Right.
Wouldn't you like to do the things you want to do versus the things you have to do? Right.
Right.
And that, again, just by defining, you can navigate that a lot easier, because it's been defined, and you can change your mind. That's the part. Like I met with a client this morning, and she's going to retire in 4 years, and she has had her business for 34 years, and she's talked to her accountant once about exit planning, like once. That's it. She has no plan. She has no idea. She and her partner run everything. So now we have to figure out, okay, well, how we have to decide if you want to sell, what's that going to look like, and how can we navigate that? Now, whether that's training, right? Whether that's somebody earning in, whether that's starting to outsource. She's in a jewelry business, repair watches, that kind of stuff. But for her, she's given herself enough time to plan, right? Even a solopreneur can figure out a way to outsource, have SOPs in place so that they can do, like, it's always consistent, and somebody can always step in. Because the new thing we started adding to our program is a succession planning, because things happen all the time. Like, you think terrible things, and it's a sad thing. But, if you just had a car accident on the way to work, does your staff get paid this week?
Right. Yeah.
Can anybody open the door for you? Like, will any orders get placed? Do they know who to order from? Right. And then I'm thinking retail, restaurant, that's more my language, but some things are automated online. Some businesses are going to be easier to work than others.
Yeah.
When there's a lot of working parts, and you're the one, the master of all the information, how does somebody step in when you can't?
So you brought up a point I wanted to ask you about. So how does this look different with I'm assuming you work with both brick and mortar or online people. Yeah. So how does that, what's the differences there between somebody that's online mostly versus brick and mortar?
Well, online is usually a newer business, so they don't have the longevity in the same sense. Brick and mortar deal with a lot more, they have more working pieces. Yeah. Because if you're not, like, I'll use my candy store as an example, or my restaurants. I mean, the simple fact is I couldn't do everything myself. So you learn that you have to hire, and then you learn, how to train so that you can have consistency. And then you learn to adapt and retrain the new person, because inevitably somebody leaves, right? Or this thing didn't come in, and you have a lot more systems in a forward-facing, in-person business than maybe a service business, right? As opposed to online, which, again, I'll be honest, if I had it to do over again, I probably wouldn't do retail or restaurant, because the margins are so small, as opposed to an online business where the margins are huge. They have so much more room to work with, because they don't have payroll is usually 30% of your incoming, top line sales. Like, payroll costs, even in a candy store, costs a lot of money. Right. To give yourself the freedom, right? And so it is different, but business, we always feel like our business is different, but really they're all the same, right? We have receivables, right? We have payables, we have profit, we have staff, we have taxes, we have bookkeeping, right? We have HR, we have all the same things. We have social media presence, we have website, we have all the things, how we interpret it. So we try not to get so granular with our clients because they know their business is best, right? So when we say you have to have SOPs for your fulfillment, whatever your fulfillment is, whether that's your service business, whether I'm shipping e-com, right? Whether you're doing a deliverable for media, whatever your deliverable is, you have to have some kind of standardized process of how that happens. So let's document it, right? And everybody's is going to be different, but the fascinating part is that we all learn from each other.
Right. Yes.
And that's the part I really like, because, you know, owning a business can be lonely. You're stuck, you know, you're in it and you don't, and the people around you maybe don't always understand, but another business owner understands 100%.
Yes. Yes, they do. So good. So good. So tell us a little bit more about your offer that you have.
Oh yeah. So well, right now we do, so usually when we go on podcasts and we're talking to people, and just for me, like my main thing is to raise awareness. You know, if you want to do an exit plan on your own, cool. I would love that. You know, I want 1 million business owners to write an exit plan so that that just, to me, that means they've understood that they might have a problem, right? And they're going to address it, and then they'll win because now they know. Can't solve a problem you don't know about.
Right. Absolutely.
So, right. So for us, we try to get bring in people to create their exit plan. So if you were to go to getexitable.com, there's an offer about creating your first exit plan, and you're able to do it for free. We give you 30 days access to the membership, where it will guide you through how to do your exit plan. You'll also be able to use your we have a calculator we built, that's software that will calculate what your business is worth. And then finally, also, it will help you identify what you need to fix in your business, to fix and capitalize on your opportunities. So that part, if people would just do those 3 things, and you can do it in a day, like we have a masterclass coming up in 2 weeks. You can come to the masterclass, we'll do it there together and get it done. So now all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, okay, I understand. I know what my problems could be, but I have lots of time to figure it out. Or I hate my life, I hate my business. I'm going to do this really fast. And so then after that, we do like a lot more group coaching for the next level. But the first part is to just do the exit plan, which again includes those 3 pieces.
I love it. So we'll make sure we put a link to that in the show notes.
That would be great.
This has been absolutely delightful.
I'm so glad.
It really was. So you are like just a delight to talk to.
I'm passionate about it, you know,
yes,
just like you are, right? About the things that are in the way. Like, gosh, anyway, I know you feel the same way about business owners. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Entrepreneurs are like, love them.
Yeah. Yeah. They need, we all need resources. We all need people to help us move up to that next level, or whatever it is you're building for, you know, whatever it is that's aligned and true for you.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? Like I was just on a class and they were talking about, you know, for some people, they get to a certain level and they're happy there. That's enough.
Yeah.
You know, I've had business owners who are like, I'm not fixing anything. I'm just going to close. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's made from wisdom. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Not just, I happened upon this and I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just going to shut down.
Right. It's not because somebody told them they were, you know, there was no worth there, because there is. Right. So anyway, sorry, I'm off track again.
No, it's okay. It's been great. So listeners, go grab her free download, go to her website, getexitable.com and grab that. Tracy, thank you so much for being on today.
I'm so glad. Thank you. It was so amazing to meet you. And I'm so glad we got to do this. And, you know, thank you. I really appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about all my stories.
Yes, absolutely. It's valuable. So we need to, you know, blast it out from the rooftops for the business owners.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. I want to invite you to download my free guide at resources.kimberlylebbing.com/unlock. It's called Unlocking Your Authentic Self, 5 Key Steps to Identify and Overcome Hidden Limitations in Your Life and Business and Realize Your Highest Potential. Thank you again for listening today.